Michael Johnson's pale skin sizzled under Ferenginar's brutal sun, but he felt nothing, immune to its wrath. The Ferengi were not so lucky. His alien guide, Kraxen, staring at Michael's undamaged flesh with a mixture of horror and amazement, as if witnessing a grotesque miracle. But there was no time to marvel. The trade negotiations were about to begin, and if Michael failed to secure an agreement, millions of humans on the frontier colonies would starve. Kraxen led Michael into the shadowed negotiation chamber, the Ferengi's bulbous forehead glistening with sweat. "Your resistance to ultraviolet radiation is impressive," Kraxen whispered, his voice laced with greed and trepidation, "but it will not save you at the bargaining table." Michael met Kraxen's gaze, his blue eyes hard as steel. The Ferengi had no idea who they were dealing with. The fate of humanity rested on this deal. Michael would do whatever it took to win, even if it meant teaching these scheming aliens a lesson they would never forget. Kraxen grinned as he led Michael to the sunlit negotiation table. The Ferengi had planned this carefully, ensuring the human would be subject to Ferenginar's harsh rays for hours on end. Surely, the pale-skinned Terran would eventually succumb to the heat and agree to whatever terms Kraxen demanded. But as the talks dragged on, Kraxen found himself increasingly unnerved by Michael's lack of discomfort. The human skin, rather than reddening or blistering, darkened to a rich bronze. Michael's eyes remained alert and focused, his energy levels seemingly undiminished by the prolonged exposure. Kraxen, on the other hand, felt his own concentration slipping. He was forced to call for frequent recesses, during which he would retreat to the shadowed alcoves of the chamber and slather his leathery skin with protective lotions. Each time he returned to the table, Michael appeared more invigorated, as if the sunlight itself was fueling his determination. Whispers began to circulate among the Ferengi delegation. Some speculated that the humans possessed a secret technology that shielded them from the sun's harmful effects. Others suggested that Michael's resilience was evidence of a more profound biological difference between their species. As the negotiations stretched into the evening, Kraxen received a disturbing report from his operatives stationed at the human embassy. The spies had observed the Terran diplomats and staff members engaging in peculiar behavior during their breaks. They would stand motionless in the sun, their faces tilted towards the ski, as if basking in the ultraviolet glow. Some of the humans even appeared to be absorbing the rays directly into their skin, their flesh shimmering with an otherworldly luminescence. The operatives, their own hides blistering from just a few moments of exposure, watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. Kraxen felt a bead of sweat trickle down his furrowed brow. He had always assumed that the humans were a relatively weak species, their lack of natural defenses making them easy prey for the galaxy's more cunning predators. But now, faced with Michael's apparent invulnerability and the unsettling reports from the embassy, he began to question his assumptions. If the humans could thrive under conditions that would incapacitate a Ferengi, what other advantages might they possess? Kraxen shuddered at the thought of facing such a species on the battlefield. He realized that he may have underestimated the Terrans, both as potential trading partners and as possible adversaries. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, Kraxen called for an adjournment. He needed time to regroup, to reassess his strategy in light of this new information. Michael, his skin now a deep burnished brown, nodded in agreement, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Kraxen watched the human leave the chamber, an uneasy feeling settling in the pit of his stomach. He had a feeling that these negotiations were far from over and that the true nature of the humans had yet to be fully revealed. The negotiation chamber was suddenly plunged into darkness as a brilliant flash of light flooded through the windows. Kraxen let out a yelp of pain, shielding his eyes with his arm. The Ferengi delegation erupted into a frenzy of panicked shouts and scrambling bodies, all desperate to escape the searing ultraviolet radiation that had engulfed the room. Michael, however, remained seated, his skin absorbing the intense rays like a sponge. He glanced around the chamber, taking in the chaos with a mix of confusion and concern. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice cutting through the din. Kraxen, who had taken refuge beneath the negotiation table, peeked out at Michael with a look of sheer terror. "A solar flare," he gasped, his voice trembling. "The radiation levels are off the charts. We need to get to shelter now." But as the Ferengi delegation fled the chamber, Michael felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The UV rays, rather than causing him pain, seemed to invigorate him, filling his body with a surge of energy. He stood up, his skin now a deep, rich bronze, and strode towards the exit. Outside, the streets of Ferenginar were in complete disarray. Ferengi citizens ran in every direction, their screams of agony piercing the air as the solar flare's unrelenting rays seared their unprotected skin. Many collapsed to the ground, their flesh blistering and peeling before Michael's eyes. Without hesitation, Michael turned to his human colleagues. "We need to help them," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "Gather all the UV protection gear and medical supplies we have. We're going to distribute them to the Ferengi." The human delegation sprang into action, rummaging through their supplies and donning protective clothing. They ventured out into the streets, braving the intense radiation to reach the Ferengi in need. Michael led the charge, his skin glowing with an otherworldly luminescence as he handed out protective goggles, gloves, and medicated lotions to the desperate aliens. Kraxen watched from the shadows, his eyes wide with disbelief as the humans worked tirelessly to assist his people. He saw Michael cradle a badly burned Ferengi child in his arms, applying a soothing balm to the youngster's ravaged skin. The sight stirred something deep within Kraxen, a grudging respect for the humans' compassion and bravery. As the solar flare finally began to subside, the Ferengi emerged from their shelters, blinking in the receding light. They stared at the humans, their expressions a mix of gratitude and awe. Michael and his team had saved countless lives, risking their own safety to help a species that had once viewed them as mere prey. Traxton approached Michael, his head bowed in a gesture of humility. "I must speak with you privately," he said, his voice low and urgent. "There is much to discuss." The two men retreated to a secluded room, away from the prying eyes of the Ferengi public. Krax and paced back and forth, his brow furrowed in thought. "Your people's immunity to UV radiation," he began. "It is a trait that the Ferengi have long envied. It has limited our ability to expand our trade empire beyond our own solar system." Michael nodded, sensing where the conversation was headed. "And you believe that human technology could help you overcome this limitation?" Kraxen's eyes gleamed with a mix of greed and desperation. "Precisely. In exchange for exclusive trading rights and access to your UV protection technology, the Ferengi will offer our vast network of contacts and resources to help your people establish a strong presence in the galactic market." Michael leaned back in his chair, considering the proposal. The offer was tempting, a chance to secure humanity's place in the universe and ensure the survival of their frontier colonies. But he knew that dealing with the Ferengi was always a double-edged sword. "I'll need to discuss this with my superiors," Michael said, his voice measured and cautious. "But I believe we may be able to come to an arrangement that benefits both our species." Kraxen grinned, his sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. "I look forward to our continued negotiations, Michael. Perhaps together, we can forge a new era of prosperity for both humans and Ferengi alike." Michael leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with the implications of Kraxen's proposal. The offer was tempting. A chance to secure humanity's place in the galactic market and ensure the survival of their frontier colonies. But he knew that dealing with the Ferengi was always a risky proposition, and he needed to be sure of their true intentions before committing to any arrangement. "Your offer is intriguing, Kraxen," Michael said, his voice measured and cautious. "But before I can agree to anything, I need to know more about your people's scientific capabilities and the potential consequences of sharing our technology." Kraxen shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Of course, Michael, we have nothing to hide. In fact, I would be happy to give you a tour of our most advanced research facilities so you can see for yourself the progress we have made." Michael nodded, sensing that Kraxon was not entirely comfortable with the idea of revealing the Ferengi's technological secrets, but he knew that this was a necessary step in building trust between their two species. The next day, Kraxon led Michael through a series of high-security laboratories, each one more impressive than the last. The Ferengi scientists were clearly skilled and resourceful, their equipment and experiments rivaling anything Michael had seen on Earth. But as they entered the final lab, Michael's eyes widened in shock. In the center of the room stood a massive device, its gleaming metal surface etched with intricate patterns and glowing with an eerie ultraviolet light. "What is that?" Michael asked, his voice tight with concern. Kraxon hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "It's a UV amplification device," he admitted. "We've been experimenting with ways to harness the power of solar flares as a weapon." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. The implications of such a technology were staggering, and he knew that in the wrong hands, it could be used to devastating effect. "Why would you create something like this?" he demanded, his eyes locked on Krax, and the Ferengi looked away, his expression a mix of shame and defiance. "Originally, we planned to use it to gain an advantage over our trading partners and potential adversaries, but your arrival and your people's immunity to UV radiation has changed everything." Kraxon turned back to Michael, his voice urgent and persuasive. "Don't you see? Together, we could usher in a new era of prosperity and security for both our species. Your technology could help us expand our trade empire beyond our wildest dreams, while our resources and contacts could ensure the survival and success of your frontier colonies." Michael hesitated, torn between his desire to forge a mutually beneficial partnership and his deep concerns about the potential misuse of the UV amplification technology. "I need time to think about this," he said finally. "I have to consult with my superiors back on Earth before I can make any decisions." Kraxon nodded, his expression a mix of disappointment and understanding. "Of course, Michael. Take all the time you need." As Michael left the research facility, his mind was in turmoil. He knew that the opportunity presented by Kraxon could be a game changer for humanity, but he also realized that the risks were enormous. Meanwhile, word of the humans' extraordinary abilities was spreading like wildfire among the Ferengi population. Some saw the Terrans as valuable allies, their immunity to UV radiation a key to unlocking new frontiers of trade and exploration. Others, however, feared the humans' potential dominance, worried that their technology and resilience could make them unstoppable. As tensions rose on Ferenginar, Michael knew that he would have to navigate a complex political landscape, balancing the needs and fears of both species while working to ensure the safety and security of all. It was a daunting task, but one that he knew he could not shirk. The future of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Michael paced back and forth in his quarters, his mind racing with the implications of Kraxon's proposal. He had sent a detailed report to Earth outlining the potential benefits and risks of a partnership with the Ferengi, but the response was taking longer than expected. The delay was making him anxious, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Suddenly, his communicator chirped, startling him out of his thoughts. It was Kraxon, and the Ferengi's voice was urgent and hushed. "Michael, we have a problem. Damon, one of my rivals, has seized control of the UV device. He's planning to use it to attack Earth to wipe out your people before they can gain a foothold in the galactic market." Michael felt his blood run cold. How did this happen? I thought the device was secure. Damon has been gathering support among the hardliners who fear human dominance. They caught us off guard, and now they have the device and a small army of loyal followers. Michael clenched his fists, his mind already working on a plan. "We have to stop them, Kraxon. If they succeed, it could mean the end of everything we've worked for." "I agree," Kraxon said, his voice grim. "I have a plan, but it's risky. We'll need to infiltrate the facility where the device is being held and sabotage it before they can use it." Over the next few hours, Michael and Kraxon worked out the details of their plan. They would need to move quickly and quietly, relying on stealth and surprise to breach the facility's defenses. Michael would take the lead, using his immunity to UV radiation to get close to the device and destroy it, while Kraxen would provide support and cover. As they made their way to the facility, Michael could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that the stakes were high and that any mistake could be catastrophic, but he also knew that he had no choice. The fate of his people, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on his shoulders. The infiltration went smoothly at first, with Michael and Kraxen slipping past the guards and making their way deeper into the facility. But as they approached the chamber where the device was being held, they were confronted by Damon and his followers. Well, Damon sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. Look who it is, the human savior and his Ferengi lapdog. Michael stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. Damon, you don't have to do this. We can find another way, a way that doesn't involve war and destruction. Damon laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. You still don't get it, do you? There is no other way. The Ferengi will never be safe as long as your kind exists. We must strike first before you can use your powers against us. With that, Damon lunged forward, his hand reaching for the controls of the UV amplification device. Michael moved to intercept him, but he was too late. Damon's fingers brushed against the activation switch, and the device hummed to life, its surface glowing with an eerie ultraviolet light. Michael felt the energy wash over him, a searing wave of radiation that would have instantly killed any other creature. But instead of burning him, the light seemed to flow into him, filling his body with a strange and exhilarating power. He could feel the energy coursing through his veins, strengthening his muscles and sharpening his senses. His skin began to glow, a brilliant and blinding light that forced Damon and his followers to shield their eyes. With a roar of defiance, Michael launched himself at Damon, his fists glowing with the power of the sun. The two men grappled, trading blows that shook the very foundations of the facility. But in the end, Michael's enhanced strength and speed proved too much for Damon, and the Ferengi leader was sent flying across the room, his body crumpling against the far wall. Michael turned his attention to the UV amplification device, his eyes narrowing with determination. He reached out with his mind, feeling the energy that flowed through the machine, and with a single thought, he tore it apart, reducing it to a pile of twisted metal and shattered glass. As the dust settled, Kraxen emerged from his hiding place, his eyes wide with awe and fear. "Michael, what have you become?" he whispered. Michael looked down at his hands, still glowing with the remnants of the UV energy. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know that I have a responsibility to use this power for good to protect those who cannot protect themselves." In the aftermath of the incident, the Ferengi government underwent a major shift in power. Kraxen, who had played a key role in stopping Damon's plot, was elevated to a position of leadership, and he immediately set about negotiating a new trade agreement with the humans, one that was based on mutual respect and cooperation. But even as the two species celebrated their newfound partnership, there were those who looked upon Michael with fear and suspicion. The revelation of his enhanced abilities and the knowledge that other humans could potentially develop similar powers raised concerns among both the Ferengi and the humans. Some saw Michael as a savior, a hero who had prevented a catastrophic war, but others viewed him as a threat, a being of immense power who could upset the delicate balance of the galaxy. As the whispers and rumors grew louder, Michael found himself increasingly isolated and distrusted. Even his own people, the humans he had fought so hard to protect, began to look upon him with a mixture of awe and fear. In the end, Michael knew that he could not stay on Ferenginar, or even on Earth. He was a changed man, a being who no longer fit into the neat categories of human or alien. And so, with a heavy heart, he set off on a solitary journey to explore the far reaches of the galaxy, seeking to understand the true nature of his powers and find his place in a universe that both revered and feared him. As his ship disappeared into the vast expanse of space, Michael knew that his story was far from over. He had a feeling that the events on Ferenginar were just the beginning, and that his destiny would lead him to even greater challenges and adventures in the years to come. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.